Welcome to the start of a brand new week here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Chris Peak. Happy to be with you here on a Memorial Day Monday. Hope you had a good weekend. I'm glad we could get things started here on Monday right here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You know the things we always ask you to do. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and then head over to the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. The most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You can find it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards to talk with other Pitt fans. All day, every day, the best online community of Pitt fans that you're going to find. And it really is all day, every day. I mean, this was a weekend. Today's a holiday. People are still on the message boards for the last 2 days, and they're going to be there today talking about everything going on in the world of Pitt sports, in the world of the ACC, in the world of college football and college basketball and college baseball. All those conversations are happening all day, every day, Panther-Lair.com. So you should be there. If you're a Pitt fan, you want to stay up to date on everything going on and also interact with other Pitt fans, that's your opportunity to do it, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. And guess what? It's June. Well, it's not June, but it's close enough to June. It's May 29th, but it's close enough to June that we can start talking about June, because if you have followed Pitt football for any amount of time, minimum 12 months, or maybe 11, because you probably heard about it. If you started following Pitt football last July, you probably heard about what happened last June. But if you've been following Pitt football for any amount of time, you know that June means recruiting, big time recruiting. And it's always been that way. I've been doing this job for many years, and June has always been a month when Pitt gets commitments, and it's across the country. I mean, it's a common time to start seeing those guys come off the board and make their commitments and join the recruiting classes. And I think it happens for a variety of reasons. I think it's always happened for a variety of reasons. Guys finish their junior years of high school, they go out, they take some visits, they check some schools out, and they want to make their decision before their senior year starts. A lot of guys say that. I want to have my decision. I want to make my commitment before my senior year starts. I don't want to have to be worrying about recruiting while I'm a senior in high school. I want to make my decision, get it done with, and all that. You hear guys say that all the time, and June just sort of lines up nicely. They can get it done, spend the rest of the summer without worrying about it, and then start their senior year without that kind of pressure, without that weight of recruiting sort of weighing on them. And I guess you could say, oh, if you want to get it done before your senior year, why not wait until August? But you don't see that. I mean, you see occasional August commitments, but for the most part, you see the bulk, the vast majority of summer commitments happen in June. And that's only intensified over the last 5 years, starting with the recruiting class of 2019, which would have been the summer of 2018. Recruits started being able to take official visits in June. Previously, it was only you could take official visits at the beginning of your senior year on. And so nobody could do anything until like September 1st or maybe that last week of August, depending on when their school started their senior year of high school. 5 years ago, we started having summer official visits. And all of the June recruiting, all of the big June commitment pushes, they all kicked into overdrive. They went on steroids because these guys were taking official visits. And that's what we're about to embark on later this week. Pitt's going to host their first official visit weekend of June on Thursday. They go Thursday, Friday, Saturday is kind of the order that they do it. They've got a prospect camp on Sunday, so they're kind of lining it up so they can focus on the recruiting Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then host the prospect camp and focus on that on Sunday. But this is where it's really going to take off. Pitt's got 3 official visit weekends scheduled, June 1st, June 8th, and June 22nd, all Thursday, Friday, Saturday situations, as opposed to sometimes typical sort of Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But this is where the recruiting's really going to get exciting. There's going to be some electricity in the air over the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And it's for a few reasons. You've already got that built-in June recruiting push that we've seen forever. But then you add in the official visit element. And I always feel like this time right here, right at the beginning of the month, is a good time. And I know we're not really at the beginning of the month yet, but considering Pitt's first official visits are going to start on June 1st, we're going to get all the preamble and prologue out here on the 29th so that once June 1st comes, we can just focus on the recruits who are coming in for these visits. I think it's important. It's always important to understand what the official visit is. And for those of you who followed recruiting for a while, you know the details here, but I think there's a lot of people that don't know sort of the specifics and particularly the difference between an official visit and an unofficial visit. And the biggest part of it comes down to who pays. I mean, that's if you want the simplest way to remember what's the difference between an official visit and an unofficial visit, just ask yourself who is paying for it. On an unofficial visit, the recruit has to pay for travel, has to pay for lodging, has to pay for food. I think if they want to eat in like Pitt's cafeteria, they have to pay $10. The only thing you can really do is give them tickets to a game on an unofficial visit. That's the only thing you can really get for free on an unofficial visit. Everything else the recruit has to pay for. An official visit is the opposite. It is all expenses paid. It's travel, it's lodging, it's food, it's experience. It's the red carpet. And the official visit is designed by those who do it well, and most schools across the country have somebody in charge of this, a couple of people in charge of making sure they do it well. The official visits are designed to give you the best possible experience for 48 hours so that by the time you leave, you can't wait to come back, and all you can think about is how you want to spend 3 or 4 or 5 years at that place doing that same thing. You want to imagine those 48 hours, because the official visit can last 48 hours. That's the NCAA rule. You want those 48 hours. If you're the coaching staff, you want to present an image and an experience during those 48 hours that makes the recruit feel like, I want to do that for the next 5 years or 4 years or 3 years. That's what I want college to be. And so there's a lot that goes into that. And you have to approach it from a lot of angles. You have to approach it from a lot of experiences. You have to approach it trying to cover all the bases. Now, oftentimes recruits are with their parents on these visits, so you're sort of recruiting the parents as well, and you make sure they see all the things they want to see in a college and make sure they see all the things that are going to give them confidence that when they send their baby boy or baby girl off to college, she's going to be well taken care of or he's going to be well taken care of. I guess we can stick to he since we're talking about football, but I mean, all the sports have these official visits where they really roll out the red carpet and make it the best possible experience. Now, a lot of that is hanging out with players on the current team, seeing what the college life is really like. What's it really like to be a student athlete at Pitt? But then there's also, meetings with the coaches. There's meetings with life skills. There's meetings with academic advisors to tell you how this is the school that will give you the best possible education for the thing you want to study. It's all designed for 48 hours straight to be nothing but good vibes and great times. Because that's what life will be like if you come to our school. That's the whole idea. And so usually coaches are pretty good at these things, putting together official visits. And there's an old joke. I mean, I've heard people on the message boards make this joke since I started, where we would write an article after an official visit and so had a great experience. And one of the first replies is always like, has there ever been a recruit who had a bad official visit? And there probably are out there. I've heard some lukewarm reviews of official visits before. But on the whole, these things are usually put together pretty well and orchestrated pretty well to give the best possible experience. And the recruits come away with glowing reviews. That's why you often see official visits lead to commitments. So it used to be, Pitt would host most of their official visits in like December and January. Occasionally, they bring in one or two during the fall season, but for the most part, I mean, Dave Wanstead, Todd Graham, Paul Chris, the early years of Pat Narduzzi, the official visits were happening in December, and you'd get these big runs of commitments at that point. And, you think back to the class of 2016, you remember there was the one weekend when Phil Campbell and Justin Morgan and, I forget, there were a couple of guys, and there were a bunch of them. Who was the... Well, Elias Reynolds, I don't think he was on that visit weekend. There was somebody else, though. But Campbell and Morgan, I think it was Justin Morgan was that kid's name. Flip from Rutgers and all this stuff. But it was that experience of the official visit. It was setting everything up to put the recruits with the right host, host from the current team, a guy to kind of show them around and give them the right idea of what life at Pitt is like. It was a combination of that plus the overall experience of the official visit. So they've always been designed to, ideally culminate in a commitment. Then in the last 5 years where they started having official visits in June, now you've got all those guys who were, thinking about committing in June anyway. Now they can take official visits. And so it's not just showing up for an afternoon and hanging out with the coaches and saying, yeah, I think this is it. Now you're getting that full official visit experience. And you're getting it in this month of June that's already sort of a recruiting boost month as it is. And what's happened is things have just gotten wild. I mean, just gone off the chain, as the kids say. As a matter of fact, I ran a few numbers here just to look back. Now, like I said, this started with the recruiting class of 2019. So in the summer of 2018, this was the first time guys could take official visits in June. So that's 5 years ago. But we really only have sort of data on 4 June official visit months, because in the summer of 2020, there were no visits. There were no recruiting visits allowed due to the COVID pandemic. So you have the recruiting classes of 2019, 2020, 2022, and 2023. Those 4 recruiting classes, which visited in the summer of 2018, 2019, 2021, and 2022, those 4 are the ones that we're really looking at as far as June official visits. And out of those June official visits, Pitt hosted 116 total official visitors over the course of those 4 recruiting classes in the month of June. And they got commitments from 48 guys. 48 guys committed during or immediately after their June official visits. So 48 out of 116. What's the math on that? Who can do that real quick? I can do it by bringing up my phone. 41% of the guys who took official visits in June committed during or right after their official visits. Some of them committed, there were guys who visited and then committed later, like Daniel Carter or Sam Okunlola took June official visits. Carter committed, publicly at least, the night of the ACC championship game in December of 2018. Okunlola didn't announce until signing day. So I'm not counting them. I'm talking about guys who committed pretty much right then or maybe 2 days after they got home because they were waiting on their graphic or their edit or their video or something like that. Guys who committed from their June official visits or on their June official visits, 41% of the recruits who visited ended up committing, which to me is a remarkable number. It's not a majority, but when you're hosting 116 guys over 4 recruiting classes, you don't have enough scholarships to take all of those guys, Like you're going to run out of room. You were never going to get commitments from all of them. There's a bunch of those guys who visited who didn't commit, who were not even takes at that point anyway. And some of them didn't commit at the time, but now they are at Pitt. Like I was just looking at Jackson Brown took an official visit to Pitt in the summer of 2021. Now he's here, or he's coming in as a transfer from Cal. But just talking about the guys who committed in June, 41% of the kids who came on official visits ended up committing in June. And I think that speaks to the June recruiting push, and it speaks to the experience on the official visits of how much momentum it can create for you. Now, what we've also seen in recent years is that these June commitments don't always stick. There have been decommitments from June commits each of these 4 years. And that's not entirely atypical. I think what often happens where you run into most of these, and it's not the case with all of them, but I would say 75% or 80% of them, of the decommitments, what happens is they take 1 or 2 visits in June, 1 or 2 official visits, love what they see at Pitt, can't imagine anything better, commit. By the time they get to December, they're still hearing from these other schools. These other schools convince them to take an official visit then, and they have a great experience there. And it's been a long time since they took their Pitt official visit. It's faded in memory a little bit. And now they've got this new place. Kadri Jackson, back in the class of 2019, went to North Carolina under those circumstances. Brandon Hill in that same class, or not Brandon Hill, Brandon Mack in that class, ended up taking some late official visits and flipping late in the process. There were a couple others. Last year, Bryce Pollock flipped to Mississippi State. Phillip Daniels flipped to Minnesota. Obviously, Camden Brown, you'll remember from 2 years ago, ended up at Auburn. And the tough part, so one thing that I guess was an advantage back in the day when you couldn't take official visits, when these guys were coming in just on unofficial visits in June and committing, is then you got to December, closing in on signing day, a month or two away from signing day when it was only in February. You got to December and you could bring them in for an official visit then. And sort of almost, you could reinforce that commitment. Certainly they had a great senior season. Other schools are contacting them, trying to get them to come in on visits, but you could bring them in for an official visit and really seal the deal and lock them up and hold on to your guys. Now, they'll get commitments over the next 4 weeks from recruits who come to Pitt on their first official visit. I mean, they've got, like a dozen or so guys already on the books for next week to come in June 1st through the 3rd. It's going to be the first official visit for all of those guys. And there are going to be some of them that commit that weekend on their first official visit. Fast forward 6 months to the first week of December, and you've got other schools trying to recruit them. Other schools saying, hey, come on, you got more official visits you can take. Just come and check us out. If nothing else, have a great weekend. And then they go and they get the red carpet treatment and they see all the love. And it's been 6 months since they've been at Pitt and they haven't had that experience in such a long time. It fades from memory, and guess what happens? Guy ends up flipping a week or two before signing day. It's going to happen. It has happened every year with these June official visits. Of those 48 recruits who committed during their June official visits, 12 have ended up decommitting one way or another. And some, I mean, there's one or two where Pitt ultimately pushed them off, but a whole bunch of them were still pretty strong Pitt targets that Pitt wanted to hold on to, and they lost 12 of them. Last year was the most. They had 4 guys who committed in June but ended up signing elsewhere. But even, the year before that, they had 2. In the class of 2020, they had 3 guys. And in the class of 2019, they had 3 guys. And you can go back and forth about, well, did they really miss those guys? Or, what was it a big deal? The point is they were committed and ended up backing off. So you expect some amount of attrition there. You're probably going to lose a couple guys from the class. That's just kind of inevitable. And so, when we get to the end of June and Pitt's got 19 commitments or 20 commitments, a couple of those guys aren't going to stick. Some might go as soon as the summer, and some it'll be the last week of November, early December when they end up flipping. But 12 out of 48, so you lost a quarter of them, over the last 4 years. And again, that's sort of spread out a little bit. That still leaves 36 recruits who committed in June and ended up signing with Pitt. And that's an important number, all right? 36. In total, over these 4 recruiting classes we're talking about, Pitt signed 69 total recruits. Nice, right? More than half of the recruits that Pitt signed over these 4 recruiting classes we're talking about committed in June. And I bring this up because as you move forward here, understand that, and this year's a little bit unique because they've already got 11 recruits committed for this class of 2024, but pretty consistently and pretty much I think you can count on it, June is going to provide the bulk of the recruiting class. That's been the case over these 4 recruiting classes we're talking about, where more than half of the recruits who ultimately signed with Pitt committed in June. You're going to get the bulk of your class out of this month. You're not going to get the whole thing. You're going to have, like this year, they have 11 commitments before they even get to the month of June. So that's a little bit unique. You're going to have guys that you pull late in the process, and that's always going to be the case. I think they'll always get maybe not 11 recruits early, but, half dozen or so. Before you get to June, and then 6 or 4 or so November and December, and maybe even in January, like late process guys, late cycle guys. But you're probably going to count on half your class coming from June, and that's what makes this month so important. Is you get all these opportunities to get these guys on campus, to get them in person, to get visits, to spend time, make the good impression, and ultimately to build like half your class or more. So as we move through this month, keep in mind that this is building the foundation of the 2024 recruiting class. This is where the kids are going to come from. And this is who they're going to have in their class. So that's what's at stake as we move into the month of June. I felt like it was important to start off the week by setting the table on Thursday. heading into that first official visit. We'll preview the whole official visit weekend. We should have a concrete confirmed list by that point, and we'll run down everybody who's coming in for visits, what we think of them, who we think they're going to land, and how they would fit in. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about this week. It should be a good one. It's exciting. It's an exciting time of year with the June official visits, so we're all looking forward to it for sure. And of course, you want to stay up to date on everything going on in the world of Pitt recruiting. It's Panther-Lair.com. Pittsburgh.rivals.com is the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news, football, basketball, and recruiting. And certainly everybody on the message boards will be talking about what's going on in the world of recruiting, and we'll be talking about it right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You do not want to miss anything we've got coming up either right here on YouTube or on Panther-Lair.com. Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Thanks for tuning in today. I appreciate it. I hope you had a great weekend. Hope you enjoyed today, whatever it is that you're doing. And we will be back with you again tomorrow for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.